What's going on, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of My Team Career here on F123. Today we head out for week 6 for the Imola Grand Prix, and we're looking to pick up just a little bit of momentum. I mean, the last couple of videos really haven't been anything to gloat over. We had a pretty mundane outing, actually rather disappointing outing out at Baku. Nothing went right that weekend. And then last video from Miami, we kind of battled the elements with the weather. It was rainy throughout most of qualifiers, then got sunny, and then we couldn't put together a good final qualifying round, and then that kind of bled into just a kind of a poor race pace there. So looking at turning around here at Imola, it's a track that I think suits the car. You could get a lot out of a pretty mediocre car. So we'll kick things here off. We're gonna buy an upgrade here for the departments, trying to keep streamlining these departments, because like I said, the last thing we want is really to just bottleneck us going down the rest of the season. So we're going to look through here. I was thinking about maybe getting a marketing one going, or trying to get something for resource development. I'm not quite sure what I was really aiming towards at this point in the season, but at the end of the day, we are going to settle for a personnel upgrade, because I think we need to get our second driver kicked off. I was talking about how, the second driver really doesn't turn things around until the later halves of the first season into season 2, but we've really noticed that Nissany just hasn't been putting in great races. It's not, again, I don't expect him to be anywhere near, not to gloat, but anywhere near us or in the points positions, but he's really struggled. He really hasn't found any sort of momentum. He was a lower rated driver going into the season, so hopefully with some upgrades to the personnel, he can get some good times in the simulators and maybe turn it around before we have to renew his contract, if we're looking to do that. So as we look there, we have a couple upgrades that aren't really scheduled to come in. We had a couple that came in just after Miami. You can see it there, one of the powertrains and something else. So a little bit of an upgrade, but we're kind of working with the same package, and not a lot going on, not something that is going to blow the wheels off any other team. We're kind of still sitting at the bottom half of the circuit, and we've kind of stalled out, and it's a little bit unfortunate. We have some good ones coming in ahead of Monaco and then into the Canadian Grand Prix. So a couple race weekends, you can see there's some slated to come in if we purchase this engine power, which we want to stay on top of the engine because we do have a really solid engine near the top of the leader, or near the top of the grid. So it's the other departments that are struggling, but we want to maintain this. This will come in ahead of Spain, which is another circuit that I think we can really attack. But right now, at the point in the season that I'm at, I'm just trying to get anything going that will get us a little bit further up the grid, because other than the Azerbaijan Grand Prix, we really just struggled, out in Jeddah. That one, we really haven't had anything going for us. So we'll fast forward here. You can see we have a whole bunch of upgrades coming in over the next couple race weekends. A lot in development that'll hopefully get us back in fighting with Williams, fighting with Alfa Romeo. But we've stalled out, like I mentioned, and it's a poor time for that to happen, because Imola is somewhere where I think we can attack. And as we progress to race weekend, we are battered for qualifiers once again with the elements. This is the second straight qualifying weekend that we had to deal with rain. So a little bit of a different mindset here. Again, last time we talked about it in Miami, it was kind of setting up the car to focus heavily on a rainy qualifier, which then turned into a sunny qualifier. So we really just didn't have the car set up going into the race weekend. So this one, I said, we'll meet somewhere in the middle. We'll try and have a balanced car that can handle the elements in qualifiers, but also be a little bit more competitive going into the race, because I just didn't want to struggle with the race pace, because I think the car is, with the good engine, it's okay. There's some areas, like it is still very heavy. The downforce isn't where we need it, but the engine is good. So if you can get a good enough setup, tweak the wings, but or get a setup that we're comfortable with, we might be able to compete for some points here for the Emilia-Romagna Grand Prix. But as we get our first lap underway, you can see we are handling the weather okay. It's the second go about with rain in this game. Much better showing than we had in Miami for our first lap. Nothing to squall about. It is the fastest lap at that point, but we did get out pretty early to get a feel for the circuit, feel for the wets, or I guess the intermediates at this point in the race. But we did drop down there. Need to put together a good lap, but as you can see, the rain has dwindled just a little bit, so the track is drying up quite a bit. Fast sector after fast sector coming in for everybody at this point. Going into sector 3, we are 1 second above the delta time, so improving with every single turn, just trying to extract as much potential. It is still wet, but there is some dry patches that you'll see as we round these last few corners going into that pit straight. So just trying trying to, you know, extract anything we can. It is a good time going. We're now at 1.2 seconds as we round the final corner. It's going to be about 1.3 second improval, and we're going to need it because we are in that danger zone, just riding on that fine line of making it into the second qualifiers. But with a beautiful time there, we are one of the few cars that had a drastic improvement, and that bumps us up into P6. So a wonderful showing there from Wet Motorsports, once again in the reins on the intermediates. That's a phenomenal time. I mean, we're only 6/10 off from Fernando Alonso, who put in the fastest lap, but there's some notable names that you'll see. Lewis Hamilton doesn't even make it out of qualifier 1, along with a few others. Again, Nissany struggling. We're going to have to see him improve here if we want to sign him for the second half of the season. But as we progress into Q2, our first lap here, you can see we were met with a little bit of traffic, not anything that's too crazy there. But the track is improving rapidly, and unlike Miami, we saw that it get dry very quickly. It is slowly improving, which does helps our chance of making it into Q3. But we're just doing a really nice job here. I was really happy with the setup that we had. I was finding, you know, the sectors were just improving time and time again. That is, at that time, that was about, we crossed the line at about P2. Guys follows us, pushed us down to P4. We know that time's not gonna hold. We're currently in P7, and on our second lap here, we are improving so much. We are now 7/10 ahead at this first sector, and we are just, you can see the sunshine, the rays of sun creeping through the trees. So it is getting fairly dry out there, and we are on a soft compound. We're on the slicks at this point. So we took a bit of a gamble. There's about half the track at this point that was on intermediate still, so they're going to be out either, you know, struggling to make that time stick. You can see Verstappen still out on the intermediates. He did put a good time in early, but we are out there. We're flying. That is a purple sector 1, as you would expect. Again, I kind of got out there a little bit early, a little bit of snap of oversteer as we hit that sausage curb and kind of lost the back end just for a moment. But we are flying out there. The time is just rapidly improving, as you would expect. I mean, it's not something to be too crazy about. We don't want to get overly excited. You know, you're going into a second run of Q2 on the slicks. Your time is going to be drastically different, but we gotta hustle it in from this point on to see into qualifier 3, and you know everybody that's on the slicks are going to be improving. Just have a look at the map. We are one of the fastest times out, or the earliest times out there. That gets us in for the fastest lap, P1 at this moment in time, and we did cross the line to try and go for a third roundabout, but as you can see, we are improving slightly. But it's going to be so close down to the edge there because, like I mentioned, well, there were so few people that were on the intermediates. A lot of them were on those slicks. So even though we set that fastest time, we are now sitting in 15th position. So with that improvement that we had over the intermediates, it's still not enough. We're going to have to be a lot faster. We are improving, but as you can see, the delta time to Albon, that's the time we're looking at. We haven't really creeped that much higher, and these guys are all out. They got in before that time as well. And as we cross the finish line here in qualifiers, it's going to be a P16th, ladies and gentlemen. We do not make it into Q3. A missed opportunity, but all in all, not a terrible showing. We just didn't quite have that slick pace that all these other cars that have been improving in the development department over the last few races. We've stalled out. Just couldn't find it. We were off by quite a bit. It was about a second and a half, so we had to improve a lot. Ladies and gentlemen, we will be starting the grid P16th. Let's dive out for the introduction of the Imola Grand Prix.
Well, today's venue has a full name that is perhaps lesser known than its informal one. So today we're at Imola, or to give it its official title, the Autodromo Internazionale Enzo e Dino Ferrari, named after their legacy. A beautiful tribute at a beautiful circuit. It's time, everyone, for the Emilia-Romagna Grand Prix. One lap of Imola, anti-clockwise of course, unlike most Formula One circuits, will take our drivers round 3.1 miles of track. 19 turns, 9 right-handers and 10 to the left. Drivers will need to be precise at the hairpin at turn 7, given the subsequent uphill section. Without a good exit from that corner, they'll lose a lot of time on that stretch. It's time to see how our drivers are stacking up after yesterday's exciting qualifying session. It's Sergio Perez on pole today, with Charles Leclerc alongside. Looking at the rest of today's grid, we have Verstappen, Sainz, Russell, Fernando Alonso, Norris, Gasly, Hulkenberg, Oscar Piastri, Bottas, Albon, Magnussen, Joe, De Vries, Ocon, Stroll, Hamilton, Tsunoda, Nissany, Tsunoda. With preparations almost complete, let's head down to the track. And with me as usual is Anthony Davidson. Let's have a chat about Williams. What do you make of their performance so far this season?
Well, the atmosphere within that team seems very positive at the moment. Everyone seems like they're in great spirits and having a lot of fun doing what they do, and that's definitely contributed to the performances we've seen.
All right, everybody, and welcome to the Imola GP. We are here at the starting grid, and it was a pretty interesting grid order. You saw Checo Perez, the man in the Red Bull that is leading his teammate Verstappen. They are both on those soft compounds, but we have 5 red lights out. This is us getting off to another fantastic start, just trying to pick up a little bit of spots there. Again, remember, we had an okay qualifier, but got stuck a little bit there in Q2, so just trying to bob and weave through the order here as we get up to 11th after a really nice move on Albon there. But as we kick off the race, you just heard my engineer tell me that there is another issue with the MGUH. So a little bit of an overheating problem. This is about our second or third race this year where we've had a little bit of engine wear. It's not something that is, catastrophic or going to cause major engine failure in the early stages of the race, but we got to be careful now because that is obviously a component that can heat up very quickly if you're not careful and can send you into a engine failure later on in the race. So we're gonna have to keep an eye on that. Again, I talked about how this engine that we picked the Mercedes engine, which has a little less power but a more durable engine, and so far we're seeing that the engine really isn't as durable as I may have hoped. Again, we haven't had an engine failure yet or been forced to DNF from a race, but again, this is the third time now where we've seen different parts of the engine start wearing. So kind of expected as we get to the later stages of this first half of the race year. We're already on race weekend 6, so it's not that unheard of to start replacing some components, but got to keep an eye on that now. Lap 1 is in the bag. We are still sitting in the points position in 10th. As you saw there, Carlos Sainz actually dipped into the pits. We're gonna have to have a look in a moment what happened there. It's unfortunate to see because he got off to a good qualifier and a good race start now, but just trying to maintain this points position. It's going to be a long race ahead of us. We know the wear on the tires is still a major problem for us, something that we're looking to address. We'll hop back to the start of the race here. You can see Verstappen now starting in P3 behind Charles Leclerc and Checo Perez. Both of them on the softs, both Ferraris on the softs. So some interesting strategies here. A lot of the teams are kicking it off, both cars on the softs. So interesting to see that some teams aren't trying to go a little bit longer or maybe have some different tires there. And this is what happened with Carlos Sainz there as Norris makes a great move around the outside into that right to left hander into that chicane. We'll go back just momentarily. You can see he lost position as he comes to go back around the outside here in just a moment. You'll see that his car just gets a little bit faster acceleration than Lando's McLaren, and he comes back in and makes front contact with the tire of Lando Norris in that McLaren, and his front wing actually took some severe damage. You can see the end plate is completely ripped off for Carlos Sainz in the Ferrari. So a little bit of an unfortunate scenario there. Lost the position going into that chicane, and as they exited, he had a much faster exit than Lando, but unfortunately that caused him some damage onto his wings. So we'll have a look here at the top 10. Perez from Verstappen, Leclerc from Norris now in 4th. Sainz is going to dip in there, so it's going to be Alonso, Russell, Gasly, Hulkenberg. The man from Haas is having another phenomenal race here as he is in 9th, and Bottas rounds out the point position there in 10th position. We are closely behind, so good start to the race from a lot of these guys, including us, and now we're just looking to hopefully dip back into the points position, which we will here momentarily, and climb as we chase on Bottas and Hulkenberg and hopefully maintain that throughout the race. So an unfortunate start there for Ferrari. Their man is going to drop down all the way into last as everybody's going to round the pit straight and pass them there. And now on to lap 4, you see Albon. That Williams car is showing some great speed there on the medium compound. So this is an interesting strategy that their top man in Albon is starting on the mediums. One of the few guys around us that are doing that. You'll see Piastri, Hulkenberg. There are a few names on there, but most of the top 10 and most of the bottom 5 or 6 cars are all on the softs, including us. So gonna have to fight really hard here to maintain this position. You'll see Piastri now makes a great move onto Albano there. But just trying to get the most out of these tires. Again, I just touched on it a moment ago, but the tire wear in the early seasons for this my team car is really, really apparent. We have started some upgrades, but they haven't quite come in yet, or we haven't had a lot of upgrades on the tire wear. It's a new component you can upgrade in this year's F1 23 game. And we've really noticed the wear on these tires in almost every single race, and the softs are probably the worst one. Obviously, I'm fighting very, very hard at the beginning of races to gain positions. We're not taking the race too easy. We're going over curbs, so a lot of it is human induced. It's my own errors, not necessarily errors, but mostly just, oh, and this is another look here. This is Oscar Piastri jarring it with, oh my word, jarring that there, trying to make an inside play. We'll have a look here at Kevin Magnussen, who is talked about Haas has done a very good job, but you can just see the pace now that Oscar Piastri had lost there as he tries. It's same quarter as Carlos Sainz, almost the exact same move, just lost the fight, comes back on the inside there to regain the position onto Alexander Albon there, and he just clips him, and unfortunately for him, he has some wing damage too. So as I was mentioning there, you just saw briefly, Hamilton now up at the P14. Remember, he started near the bottom of the grid. He did not get out of Q1, so great to see that Hamilton and that Mercedes are having a very good go about here early in the Emilia-Romagna Grand Prix. You can see Russell just lost the position to Hulkenberg. Both of those Haas cars, they have one of the fastest engines on the grid this year, and they are putting it to the test here again in this Grand Prix. And as we hop aboard now, lap 8, our own race, you can see we're starting to lose a little bit of tire degradation there, a little bit of snap of oversteer as we go into that corner. Tires are, you know, they're not horrible. Again, this is a shortened race. We're playing on medium, or I guess the 35%, whatever you want to call that, whether that's a short race or a medium race. I can't remember exactly what it's called, but we are. So all these tires are kind of bumped down a little bit more than you would see in a normal race pace. So lap 8 here, probably a little faster than we'd like to see our tires be at 36%, 35% on that right-hand side. Obviously, there's a lot of right-handers, but you're putting a lot more pressure onto those tires throughout the majority of this race. But we're doing an okay job here. We have a little bit of a gap. It's not much. Albon and Piastri are both still within that second. So on every single pit straight, every time we start a new lap, you got to expect these guys to come full force down there with the DRS flap open. Their cars are extremely fast. Our car has some pace behind it, but when we're just sitting there with no way to defend really other than draining our ERS battery, you can see we're pretty much done with that in lap 9. Not the best management there of my ERS system. The overcharge is hurting a little bit more than I would like, but doing an okay job just defending from these guys. We know the pressure is going to be there. We just want to basically make it into the second stint, make it into our pit stop, and hopefully we can put on some better compounds and finish the race. But as we round this corner here, the first part of sector 2, we see a yellow flag out, and as George Russell is out of the session, so the Mercedes car is forced to retire. We'll have a look in just a moment at what happened with him, but we're just gloating over how well Hamilton is handling his Mercedes out there. We saw a little bit of struggle with George Russell fighting Hulkenberg. He didn't look like he had quite the pace. And as we go on board here with George Russell, this was just up ahead of us. No puff of smoke coming out of the back of his car, so I wouldn't say it's necessarily an ICE issue. It might be another component or just loss of power, whatever it might be, but that is unfortunately, that is it for George Russell. And as we hop back on the leaders, we haven't checked in with the leaders for a while. The race is nearly halfway over. Leclerc just made a beautiful move on the inside on Perez. So Verstappen is now leading this Grand Prix. He had a beautiful overtake a couple laps before this, but now Leclerc, I've talked about the Ferraris a lot. We can't really include Sainz in this conversation because he had the issue on lap 1, but these Ferrari guys, the Monegasque man of Charles Leclerc is putting this car to work. It has looked beautiful here in the early goings of this season. Obviously, they don't quite have the pace that Verstappen continues to show in the Red Bull. We see that in real life as well. But good to see that the Ferrari is now split the difference between the two Red Bulls ahead of the pit stops. This is our pit stop here on lap 11. We desperately need some new tires, 47% on that front right. So we're going to pit. It's an optimal time pull in. You get to see the crew pull it off. And as they go to put on that front right medium, it's just putting it on just seemed to cause so much trouble, and that is so unfortunate as it is a 4.8 second stop, and we come out behind Hamilton, Magnussen, and I believe there was somebody else that came out in front of us as well. You'll see Nick DeVries. He's not really in our race, but now we're at the bottom of the pack, and well, that was expected before we stopped a little bit early with some of these guys that were on the softs going on to the mediums. But that is so unfortunate to see that the pit crew just had a little bit of a bobble with that front right compound, and they just didn't get it back on in time. It was a really lengthy pit stop. Again, we don't have a lot of points upgrades into the pit crew. We're going to have to spend some of that our cash and resource trying to get them up to speed with some of these other teams on the grid. But that is just such an unfortunate stop here. We'll have a look. This is actually our teammate Roy Nissany, who kind of another mundane race from him. We're going to have to look to see him improve a little bit. But yeah, a slow pit stop for Nissany as well. So a little bit of struggles here from our pit crew in this Grand Prix puts us out behind some of these most important guys that we were battling it with. And this is surely, once we round the final pit straights, I think there's one more pit stop after this lap to go. So we'll see the true positioning here on lap 13, I believe. But now lap 12, you can see we're still struggling just to catch up with some of these guys. We do get a nice exit, stay ahead of Guan Yu Zhou, stay ahead of Lance Stroll, some of these teams that were already behind us. But now we're stuck in a group of cars that are fighting. You see Piastri got out in front, so this is, while they're all battling it, this is not the easiest track other than the pit straight to really overtake. You can make some late lunges into the corner. You'll see that here in just a moment on Nick De Vries as we look to at least stay close with Albon. But we were ahead of these guys going into the pit straight. We do have a green sector 1 here, so the mediums are warmed up. They are activating quite nicely. We'll swing to the outside there, a little bit of a slipstream. We'll cut to the inside there and make a nice move on Albon. So we get that position back, but oh man, it's frustrating to see when you're having a pretty solid race. You had such a great stint 1. You bounce up into the points, handed you that 10th position by the issues with Carlos Sainz, and then the pit crew lets you down. But as I've always said, while they had the bobble, we are a team. We're looking to build a team together. We know that we don't have the resources put into our pit, so we got to cut them a little bit of slack. You win together, you lose together. It's just so unfortunate to see. Now we jump up lap 14 on board here with Lewis Hamilton, who's done a great job to get himself back into the point position. His car is firing on all cylinders. Hopefully he can hold on, because remember, he is the only Merc in the field there. As the pits come to an end, we are in P13, so we lost 3 positions with that slow pit stop. You can see the top 10 now, pretty similar to what it was before. You see Pierre Gasly in the Alpine car, the Frenchman trying to put the pressure on Nico Hülkenberg. That Haas car is doing a phenomenal job up in P7. He is going to be left a little bit. I think he still has DRS. No, he does not. So he's a little bit out of that 1 second mark from Carlos Sainz. But look at the speed of it. I mean, that is Pierre Gasly putting on the pressure with DRS onto Hülkenberg, and until the end, he didn't make the overtake until the very, very end. But now you see Carlos Sainz, the initial lap 1 incident really didn't slow him down all that much. To be in P6 after all the pit stops, he'll obviously have to make those hards work a lot longer than anybody else. But up into P6, I think Ferrari would be happy with that after the start they got off to. Lando Norris in P5 chasing down Alonso in that Aston Martin car. And then we have the Perez looking at the tailpipe, the rear end of Charles Leclerc, who is still holding off strong in P2. And I mean, the gap between P1 and P3, the podium, the fight for the podium is very, very close here. Verstappen, we're so used to him in clean air being miles ahead, but this just shows you the pace that, you know, Leclerc is having. He's kind of towing along Checo there in position 3, but you got to give credit to this Ferrari team. They're looking so strong in the early goings in every race. I believe they've been on the podium in every single one here. As we hop back to lap 15 now, that was Guan Yu with the DRS flap making a late move on us. We'll slam on the brakes a little bit late, get into that chicane, back on the good racing line, and now we have a really good exit there. We put a little bit of distance, but just trying to maintain. I did take a little bit of an easy going here in stint 2 with these mediums, because I knew, you know, there was a lot of guys around us on hards. Their tires are obviously going to work a lot better. The AI teams have more resources. That was an option that we chose at the very beginning of this whole journey. So we know that their tire wear is going to be significantly better than ours. So I'm just trying to take these corners a little bit easier than I would. Let the AI make some mistakes. We saw Guan Yu be a little bit too aggressive there. He locked up. He didn't quite get the exit. And now we're about a second ahead of these guys. So it was a really good end of sector 1 into sector 2 here. Both red, obviously the tires are starting to degrade. You're starting to get a little bit of rubber built up on them, the marbles, everything like that. We had a bit of marbles on the front left. You could see it there for a minute. But not bad to just try and maintain that position of P13. It's going to be a long shot to come back into the points. But as we go to lap 17, all that glorious talk about Charles Leclerc ends with heartbreak as he is forced to pit here. And you can see the changing of that nose, so some nose damage for him as well. That was such a lengthy pit stop. He comes out behind his teammate Carlos Sainz, and this is what this same chicane. This has been an absolute race breaker here in this Grand Prix. As you see, Charles Leclerc tries to get aggressive. It was Checo putting the pressure around the outside into that left-hander, back into the right-hander, and same thing on the other side of the car there. Leclerc just gets a good exit and speeds up a little too quick, and he will clip his front left wing, break the end plate off, and force to pit, ruining his race. You can see he's on the softs. He does set the fastest lap as expected, being on the soft compounds this late in the race. The track has warmed up. It's gotten better with every single lap here as the day gets on. Oh, you hate to see that, though, for somebody that has had such amazing race pace. But as we look at our race here, I somehow have also picked up front wing damage. I'm not sure how that happened. We've been out in front of Albon, Joe, all these guys. That's a picture that you don't want to see. Engine trouble, tire wear, and a damaged front wing. But we didn't get the call from our engineer that it was going to slow us down. I really didn't notice too much. It wasn't until I noticed, the HUD pop up that there was damage. So I don't know if it was just taking one of those sausage curbs into that chicane a little bit aggressive. The front nose maybe clipped it, got a little bit of damage. I'm not quite sure what happened there, but we're driving okay. We're still about 7-8 tenths. The gap's going to close once again here as we get into the pit straight, but a little bit baffled as to where that damage came from, because we haven't really had too many battles other than that one with Joe, but that was on my right-hand side going into the left-hander. We were clean about it, so unfortunate to see. Hopefully it doesn't cause too much damage here. Back up to the leaders now. Lap 19. Max Verstappen is still being pressured by Checo. So the two Red Bull on identical strategies, probably the exact same setup of car. You got to give it to Checo Perez. He is maintaining with the current points leader in the Drivers' Championship, and he is just looking fantastic here. Well, look, he makes the aggressive move to the inside. That is a dangerous part of the circuit there to overtake. Yes, it's the pit straight. He could have gone around the outside with the DRS flap open and the slipstream, but he goes right against that wall and makes an aggressive overtake on Max Verstappen. So you got to imagine with a couple laps left, it's going to be back and forth, cat and mouse chase on that DRS train just to see who comes out on top. But it's very exciting now. I've talked about it. Max Verstappen's gap in this game, unlike real Formula One, has not been as big as I was expecting. And now we'll hop back here. The position for the final podium spot after Charles Leclerc is forced to drop back into 10th position there with that wing damage is the battle between Lando Norris in the McLaren and Alonso of the Aston Martin. That is super exciting to see two guys that are having fantastic weekends. Similar to what we just saw in Silverstone this past Grand Prix. Lando Norris is looking unbelievable here for Team McLaren. But we still have a task at our hand. The tire wear is a little bit of an issue here. You can see we're just taking these corners much slower than we probably want. Albon behind us. Stroll has now caught up. You can see the MGUH is quite damaged there. But as we round this corner and start our second sector, look at the times. Albon drops behind Stroll. We are now nearly 2 seconds clear of all these guys, which is a great advantage because it means we don't have to push our tires that much to the end. We should be in the clear, and this is what happened. Listen to that. That's a rear tire lockup for Albon for really no reason at all. He was right behind us. Maybe he was trying to get a little too aggressive, missed the braking point, and now he slips down behind Stroll and well away off from us. So it should be easy cruising here for a P13 finish. This is our teammate, Roy Nissany. The thing I've noticed is he just doesn't have the awareness to make an aggressive play when somebody messes up. You just saw a huge lockup by by Albon. Stroll passed them. Nissany was right there. He was about 2 tenths off, and he just didn't quite have the courage or anything, the awareness, the racecraft, whatever it might be, to make that play onto the back of Albon to make that position game. But here we go now, lap 21 here. You can see Albon makes the move on Stroll, so he regains position 14. We're still hanging on, just a nice casual drive here in Imola. And like I said, pending any major issues, this should be a nice cruising couple laps here to finish P13. Not quite in the points range that we were hoping for. I think we could have challenged it. It still would have been tough to battle Leclerc, who was on the sauce. Hamilton, who had a great race coming from the back end of the circuit, but a little bit of a hiccup there with the pit crew is the difference between possible points, but we are making progress. It is a step up from Miami. It is a step up from Baku. You can see Perez now looking to make the late play, and he does. That is an unfortunate incident there for Verstappen, who just locked up and went a little bit wide, and Perez had the crossback on him. Makes the move on the inside to the outside of that chicane. That's a beautiful overtake for Perez on the final lap to gain such an advantage here. And this is the same corner. Alonso makes the move onto Lando Norris to get up into that final podium position. And for Verstappen and Norris, that is just such bad mistakes. They just break a little bit too late, miss the braking point, lock up, and both Alonso and Perez say thank you very much for those positions. And that will surely decide the final podium as Checo Perez wins it here in Imola. Oh my word, that is a phenomenal final lap move from the Mexican driver, and you see Alonso will easily cruise into number 3. Unfortunate for Lando, who had that all but in the bag, and just in such an aggressive, phenomenal move there by Alonso. And that is your order there, as you see on our race. Checo Perez crosses the finish line for Red Bull. It's a 1-2 finish for them, and then rounding it out is Alonso. But some fantastic battles late here in the final dire laps, the final corners of the race. to see that. And you see, we will round out our race. We're taking everything nice and safe. We really didn't heat up the MGUH like I thought we would. We only increased it by about 5%. You can see the TC there is also heating up to about 62%. So we're gonna have to replace some parts on the engine going into next race. But for us, again, I'm very happy with this. You see, the cars did catch us. I've been driving a little bit more conservative, not quite looking to put any sort of issues. We lost that front end plate as it flew off from us. But all in all, I am very happy with this race. It's not quite the points we were looking for, but progress is progress. We're making some little, leaps and bounds, and we'll hopefully get in there as we head to Monaco, which will be a tough test for the car. Lewis Hamilton wins driver of the day. We'll head you out to the podium now to get the trophy presentations underway.
And that's it then for the Emilia-Romagna Grand Prix. And what a sensational victory they've managed to pull off here. Anthony Davidson, how do you think they were able to set themselves apart today?
I feel like consistency was probably the key today. There's being quick, and then there's being quick lap after lap after lap. If you can do that, you can capitalise on other people's errors without making many of your own. And that's an approach that can push you a long way up the field.
Red Bull are our winners today after showcasing some incredible driving. There's been a huge push from them lately to stay competitive with the other teams, and they're certainly proving themselves.
Well, there you have it, ladies and gentlemen. Checo Perez wins it for Red Bull. He's got to be so ecstatic to beat his teammate Max Verstappen, who has been off to an electric start here in the early goings of our F123 calendar. I gotta say, good on Alonso to finally get up at the podium. We haven't really seen the transition from real life to the video game like we were expecting, but that is your podium. That is your Imola Grand Prix. We head out to Monaco next race. Make sure you guys stay tuned for that. Again, not at all a bad race. We started in P16th, climbed up to P13th. We were right there. A little bit of an unfortunate incident in the pit will end our day just outside the points. But guys, thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video. Make sure you like and subscribe for more Formula One videos and other content coming soon. We'll catch you back in the next one for the beautiful Monaco Grand Prix. Enjoy the rest of your night, guys.